Shalom. This week's Torah portion in the land of Israel is Parashat Pinchas. The portion of Pinchas opens with the bold and unprecedented action of its namesake, as God here declares, Pinchas, son of Eleazar, son of Aharon the Kohen, turned back my wrath from upon the children of Israel, when he zealously avenged my vengeance among them. So I did not consume the children of Israel in my vengeance. Therefore say, Behold, I give him my covenant of peace, and it shall be for him and his offspring after him a covenant of eternal priesthood, because he took vengeance for his God, and he atoned for the children of Israel. Our parsha begins as a direct continuation of the concluding verses of last week's portion of Balak, chapter 25, verses 1 through 9. When the wicked heathen prophet Bilam saw that despite his best intentions and efforts to deliver terrible curses upon Israel, he failed dismally because he was prevented by God from doing so, and instead, through him, God actually channeled his own beautiful blessings upon his children of Israel. When he saw all this, Bilam decided that desperate situations call for desperate measures. King Balak of Moab, who had hired Bilam to do his thing, was still determined to do away with Israel, and Bilam had one last idea. He was well aware that the God of Israel despises all forms of sexual immorality. So Bilam concluded that leading Israel down that path could be the one sure way to guarantee their destruction. So our sages teach, he gave some parting advice to King Balak. Bilam advised him to trip up Israel by launching a program designed to strike at Israel's spiritual core, to entice the men of Israel into immorality with the Moabite women, and ultimately to idol worship. The plan called for the Moabite women to seduce the men and lure them to worship the Baal Peor, and then their God will really get angry after all, and all the flaring wrath of HaShem that had been avoided when Bilam failed to curse the people during God's moment of anger will come to pass as a result of this. And so it was. A downward spiral ensued, and it appeared that the plot was working devastatingly well. A massive effort was underway, insidious and wicked, to destroy the very foundation of the nation of Israel by striking at the very foundation of the community, their sexual purity. Many were caught up in it. It was a really bad situation. A plague began to wreak destruction on the people, and in the midst of it all, a horrific incident occurred. One of the tribal leaders of Israel, Zimri, the son of Salu, a prince of the tribe of Shimon, in an act of unspeakable brazenness, took a Midianite woman and committed a sexual act with her before the eyes of Moses and the entire assembly. Aside from the terrible immorality involved, the act was also done as a calculated, direct rebellion against the authority of Moshe. Verse 6 of chapter 25 informs us that as this act was being perpetrated before the eyes of Moshe and the entire assembly of the children of Israel, and I quote, they were weeping at the entrance to the tent of meeting. The they referred to in this verse refers to Moshe and the elders, all of Israel's leadership, who were weeping because they were rendered powerless. They did not know what to do, how to respond, because they forgot what they had learned, what halakha, Torah's law as given over by the Almighty, what halakha requires in a situation of this public display of copulation with an idolatress. What punishment or policy is applicable for this public desecration of God's name? In order for the court to punish, not only must there be witnesses, as there certainly were here, but a warning must be issued. But all this is happening all at once. But in contrast to the tears of Moshe and the elders, it was this man Pinchas who knew what the moment required. He acted according to the rule that Moshe had taught, but subsequently forgotten, that in such a situation, a zealous individual is authorized to strike. This halakha, which Moshe forgot, applicable only in this unusual circumstance, is known as Kanaim Pogim Bo. A zealot strikes the offender. What is a zealot? The Hebrew word Kanai is defined as someone who is very pious and committed to his position and will fight for it. And so he stood up, as the verse says, from amid the assembly, took a spear in his hand and pierced them both. And only then was the plague halted from upon the children of Israel. So now our parsha of Pinchas begins. HaShem spoke to Moshe saying, Pinchas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aharon the Kohen, has turned my anger away from the children of Israel by his zealously avenging me among them, so that I did not destroy the children of Israel because of my zeal. But how could it be? How could it be that Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses our master, And all the elders of Israel all of a sudden forgot this ruling. How could Moshe forget an important ruling of the Torah? Some sages express the opinion that the very reason that Moshe, of all people, was suddenly unable to remember this particular halakha was to pave the way for the emergence of Pinchas as a new kind of leader, a part of the generation that would be entering the land without Moshe. Truth was hidden from Moshe so that Pinchas could arise. No Beit Din could carry out this sentence, but HaShem was waiting for Pinchas to carry it out. And what is the meaning of the expression, my eternal covenant of peace? We need to know that it was only now that Pinchas slew Zimri. It was only now, when he slew Zimri and the Midianite woman, that he merited to the priesthood. Unlike Aaron and his children, Pinchas, Aaron's grandson, was not considered to be a Kohen until he killed Zimri. Before this, he was a Levite. So presumably, according to the simple interpretation, we could understand the phrase an everlasting priesthood to mean that even though the priesthood was already given to the offspring of Aaron, it was only given to Aaron and to his children who were anointed at the time with him, and to their offspring who would be born after they were anointed. But Pinchas was born before this, but he had not been anointed at that scene because he was still little. And when he grew older, he was not anointed because, after all, Aaron and his sons were anointed at the time of dedication of the tabernacle, and therefore Pinchas kind of fell through the works, and he did not become a Kohen until this moment. But clearly the emphasis we are being taught is that Pinchas is singled out by the Almighty as deserving to merit the Kahuna, the priesthood, through his own merit, and not just by being a descendant of Aaron. And this, having been known all along by HaShem, is why his entering into the priesthood waited until now. It was important that he was not anointed simply on the weight of the fact that he was a descendant of Aaron. And then there's the amazing tradition that Pinchas, transfigured as it were by God, became known as Elijah the prophet, who never died. The same Elijah, the prophet, who manifests himself as an advocate and helper of the people of Israel throughout history. Same Elijah the prophet who attends the circumcision ceremony of every Jewish baby boy and every Passover Seder. In the words of the Targum Yonatan on our portion, Pinchas became an angel, alive and living forever, who will announce the redemption at the end of days. Same Elijah who announces the arrival of the Mashiach, the very same. Pinchas's act was not necessarily popular at the time. Many of the Israelites looked upon it as wanton aggression. They criticized him and actually accused him of murder. But God disagreed strongly with that criticism, bestowing upon him an eternal covenant of peace. What does that even mean? And how are we to understand it? Ostensibly, Pinchas committed an act of violence and gets rewarded with a covenant of peace. But if it were really left up to the individual, his zealousness could be interpreted positively or negatively. But how do any of us know how to act in a most crucial situation? When faced with a test, a challenge that's unclear, how can I ever really know if what I think I need to do is a mitzvah or a sin? That conundrum is what Pinchas addresses. He made a difficult and brave decision. God himself bears witness that Pinchas acted for the sake of heaven when he avenged my vengeance, God's vengeance, not his own. Pinchas completely nullified his own ego. Therefore, says God, I give him my covenant of peace. No one can question it. Had Pinchas' action been based on some other selfish motivation with some different intention, like, for example, if he always hated Zimri or had something against him, or if he wanted to be thought of as a hero, then the very same action would have been a sin. But what transformed his act into something that shines forever, that merited him the reward of living forever, or at least of becoming a bona fide Kohen in a non-mystical sense, what did that was his pure and simple intention to sanctify God despite the dangers. It's a question of extra, putting in extra effort. He was willing to do more. Indeed, he was ready to be killed for this act, and as far as he knew, that's what would happen. And despite the judgment of others, God's own testimony attests to his greatness, a status HaShem declared to be eternal. Pinchas got nothing out of this. He had no agenda here. This wasn't about him at all. He wasn't a jealous man out to avenge his own jealousy. His concern was for the honor of HaShem, which was being desecrated by the disdain shown for his Torah and for Moshe Rabbeinu. So HaShem says, behold, I give him my covenant of peace, so that no one has any doubts about the true nature of what Pinchas did. Pinchas restored peace to the Jewish people, and for that received a personal, eternal covenant of peace. Commenting on these words, I give him my covenant of peace, Rashi explains that it should be a covenant of peace for him, just as a man owes gratitude and favor to someone who did him a favor, so here God expressed to him his feelings of peace. In other words, Pinchas' action was doing God a favor. In order to better understand the enigma of this person, Pinchas, and his place in history, and in order to understand all of this, we need to understand what's happening before our eyes, the transformation that's taking place here in the book of Numbers. Sefer Bamidbar, the book of Numbers, can be divided into two parts. The first section being from Parashat Bamidbar in the beginning until Parashat Korach, and the second section from Parashat Balak until the book's conclusion. Whereas Parashat Chukat, in the 40th year of the desert sojourn, is the transition point between the two. The first part of Numbers focuses on the generation of the desert, the children of Israel who left Egypt, that generation who received the Torah. They're characterized by passivity. They were all about receiving Torah and being receptive to Hashem's will, not passivity in a negative way. Their biggest challenge, though, was to remain receptive to that will of Hashem as they are forming into a nation. They were a generation that was led by the divine will. The Holy One, blessed be He Himself, took them out of Egypt with signs and wonders and prepared them to receive the Torah. Moshe's leadership was the dominating factor in their relationship with Hashem. It wasn't really so much about them and Hashem, it was about Moshe's relationship with Hashem. The generation of the desert experienced life on a level of transcendence. Through the greatness of Moshe and the priesthood of Aaron, this was all a present from heaven. The manna, the clouds of glory, the well of Miriam, going back to the miracles of Egypt and the Exodus. They were a passive generation, and their relationship with God, their service of Him, their avodah, was based on their being a vessel to receive only. But now, since Parashat Chukat, we encounter the generation that will inherit the land. This generation is not passive. It's a generation of individuals, and they have a need to assert themselves as individuals. For once within the land, each will have to find his own way to connect to God. Their leaders are departing the scene. Aharon and Miriam have already passed away, and Moshe will not be with them for long. The generation needs a more active leadership, one that gives voice to each individual as a component of the nation. The emphasis shifts from Moshe to the entire nation, who, with their entry into the land, will now become active partners with the Almighty to bring about their own redemption, which is the redemption of the world. Everything about Moshe and his leadership, everything he did, was by heavenly direction, an idea expressed by our sages as the Shekhinah spoke from Moshe's throat. But now comes the dawning of a new age, heralding the entrance into the land, and it will be the age of leadership through serving Hashem, through self-motivated action, self-generated, not led by heaven, and not through Moshe, but requiring man to make the first move. This is a reflection of the nature of the oral Torah, which is the characteristic of this generation. It's as demonstrated by Pinchas' action. Get this, the older leadership wept because they could not recall the proper response, open up your heart in the deepest way, meaning they could not relate to it. And what was the proper response? In the case of an Israelite who would publicly sin with a Midianite woman, it was a law passed down in tradition by the oral Torah, meaning spoken by God and transmitted orally by God to Moshe at Mount Sinai, namely that a zealous man shall strike them. Pinchas, a new leader of this generation, was that zealous man, feeling the zeal of avenging Hashem's honor. This type of behavior, unknown and forgotten to the previous generation, the generation of the desert, is a manifestation of the generation of the land. Now begins the aspect of Eretz Yisrael, which will not be about being led by heaven, about the Shekhinah speaking for us, but rather about man making the first move, man taking the initiative. Thus Pinchas' priesthood, the game changer, Pinchas, the man of action, perfectly represents this new generation of action whose rectification and duty to Hashem will be dependent on action. And Pinchas' deed precedes Joshua's appointment as leader over the children of Israel. As part of this process of generational transformation, Yehoshua, Joshua, is appointed to lead Israel as Moshe's successor. And Moshe prays to God, may Hashem, God of the spirits, the ruchot, of all flesh, appoint a man over the assembly. Rashi explains the significance of this unusual expression, God of the Ruchot, the spirits. Moshe said, Master of the universe, you know that each person has a different character and no two people are alike. Please appoint a leader over them who will be able to accept each one according to his particular character. In other words, Moshe prays according to his realization that the new leader will need to allow each person to express himself according to the nature and character of each individual and tribe. It's the dawn of the era of each individual taking his or her place within the body of the nation. And the nation of Israel is, in this generation, will be characterized by action, much like our generation. HaShem responded, take to yourself Joshua the son of Nun, a man in whom there is ruach, spirits. And again, as Rashi explains, as you requested, he has the ability to deal with the character of each one. And there's a thread here that connects so many of the ideas in our parsha. In our parsha, too, we encounter the daughters of Tzelaphchad, a man who passed away with no sons. These 5 women came forward to seek and request a portion of inheritance in the land of Israel. Who were these women? This was not some act of radical feminism, of a challenge to the patrilineal society. It wasn't women trying to make a statement in a men's world, a gambit for equal rights. These righteous women were motivated by their intense love for the land of Israel and their vision to be mothers in Israel and take their place in the bringing of a new generation into the land. Like Pinchas, it was all motivated for the sake of heaven. The women's heartfelt feelings are revealed to be perfectly aligned with the divine will. Once again, as it was in the case of Pinchas's action, human initiative is revealed to be in line with the plan of God. HaShem was just waiting for them to ask. So Joshua is appointed, and Moshe Rabbeinu ascends to gaze upon the land which God decreed he would not merit to enter. Actually, honestly, because he is not a proper fit to this generation of those who inherit the land. This Parsha of Pinchas also features the daily and musaf, additional offerings that will be offered in the Beit HaMikdash, the Holy Temple. There are 2 sections in the whole Torah that deal with aspects of the holy days and festivals. Parashat Emor, chapter 23 in the book of Leviticus, and here, Parashat Pinchas. But it's only here, surprisingly, and not in Vayikra, that the musaf offerings of the holidays are delineated. The word musaf means additional, meaning in addition to the daily tamid offering. The Korban Musaf is a congregational offering brought in the Holy Temple on special days, Shabbat, the 3 pilgrimage festivals, Pesach, Sukkot, Shavuot, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippurim, and on every Rosh Chodesh, the new moon. These are days of extra sanctity, days that call out holiness and challenge us to rise to that something extra, that something special, the shining thing within us, the side of our individual initiative. The Musaf offerings indicate an additional level of holiness, something above, extra. Any day upon which a Musaf offering is brought in the temple is a day that radiates an extra additional level of holiness. Just as Pinchas demonstrated and displayed that level and culled it forth from some deep inner dimension, just as the daughters of Tzelaphchad were motivated to do something extra for their part for the sake of the future of the nation of Israel and her land, this Torah portion of Pinchas teaches us that we all have access to a deeper level, where our motivation is pure, where our intentions are for the sake of heaven, where we're ready to go the distance, wherein we are called upon, we can merit to show that our intentions are for the sake of heaven. Going into the land of Israel, everything is going to be about taking the initiative. Pinchas acquired the priesthood because, commensurate to the changing generation, now everything about the avodah, meaning the service of God, meaning essentially the stuff of our lives, everything will be dependent upon us. Pinchas demonstrated and taught us that the Jewish people, through their actions, are given the ability to change the Torah's rules of engagement. This is Hashem's plan. That's the thing about the oral Torah. It was all given at Sinai, but it is given over for the Bnei Yisrael to bring it from the realm of the potential to the realm of actuality, of action. Moshe was so great and so holy, but he couldn't have been the one to have killed this man who was desecrating Hashem. It had to be Pinchas. Pinchas, who received God's covenant of everlasting peace, because the leadership of Moshe was directed by heaven. Look, in the apex of Moshe's time at the sea, when the Egyptians were in pursuit, what did Moshe say in Exodus chapter 14 and verse 14? He said, Hashem shall make war for you, and you shall remain silent. That was the generation of the desert. Now, following Pinchas' action on the eve of entering into the land, chapter 25 and verse 16, what do we find? HaShem said to Moshe, harass the Midianites and smite them, fight. That's the generation of the land. What Pinchas did blows our mind. In our world of political correctness, where everybody is okay, and anything anybody does is okay, and if you dare question the most radical, ungodly deviance, you're branded a hater. Pinchas was a lover, not a hater. His severe act was born out of love for the people of Israel and a desire to safeguard and vouchsafe their purity, as Elijah the prophet does at every Brit. He's the same person, he just changed hats. From how he looked at the situation, and especially from how others viewed him, we can learn how not to look at an action itself only on the surface level, but to strive to examine its motivation. How important it is to act for the sake of heaven and not out of personal motivation. That it's forbidden to judge people by what we see on the surface level, but we must judge favorably because we don't know their inner motivation. And the biggest challenge of all, to examine ourselves and ask if we're doing something because it's what HaShem desires from us, or because it's in our own interest, or maybe just the most convenient thing. This is the lesson of Pinchas, archetype and builder of a new generation, the generation of Eretz Israel, the land of Israel. Action is the key, sanctifying our lives through everything that we do, bringing to the forefront our deepest, personal, individual will to make HaShem's will our will, to bring HaShem's will, His light, His plan, His presence, His Shekhinah into the world.